What happens when the private lives of one of K-pop's most powerful groups suddenly explode into the public eye, and the backlash doesn't just come from fans, but from the members' own families? Stray Kids, the JYP Entertainment powerhouse with a global fan base of millions, just found themselves at the center of a storm nobody saw coming. Hotel rooms, secret meetups, leaked photos, and whispered names. The internet went absolutely nuclear, and stays across the world were left scrambling for answers. But here's the question that nobody's really asking: what did the parents think? Because when Korean media started digging into the so-called hotel dating scandal, it wasn't just fans who were furious. Sources say family members of certain Stray Kids members were livid, not just at the situation, but at the way their sons' reputations were being dragged through the mud. Were these dating rumors even real, or were they manufactured chaos designed to destroy careers? Did Stays overreact, or did they have every right to feel betrayed? And most importantly, which members were actually involved, and what really went down behind those closed doors? Tonight, we're counting down from number 8 to number 1, breaking down each member's connection to this scandal, the real reactions from their families, and the emotional shockwave that ripped through the fandom. Some of these will shock you. Some will break your heart. And at least one, trust me, will completely change the way you see this group forever. So buckle up, because this isn't your typical idol gossip list. This is the full story, told with every uncomfortable detail intact. Ready? Let's get into it. Number 8. I.N. The youngest son's shield, a mother's fury unleashed. Young Hyunjin, better known as I.N, the baby of Stray Kids, the member who debuted at just 17 years old, the one Stays have collectively agreed to protect at all costs. And yet, when the hotel dating scandal first broke across Korean forums and Twitter timelines in a wildfire of blurry photos and anonymous tips, his name was one of the first to get dragged into the mess. Not because there was hard evidence. Not because any credible outlet confirmed anything. But because the internet operates on guilt by association, and when you're part of a group caught in a scandal, every single member becomes a target. Here's what people don't understand about I.N's position within Stray Kids. He's not just the youngest member of the group. He's the youngest in his actual family too. The kind of kid who grew up surrounded by warmth, protection, and a household that took pride in raising a son who made it into one of the biggest entertainment companies in South Korea. His parents, particularly his mother, have been known within fan circles for being incredibly supportive yet fiercely private. Unlike some idol parents who occasionally appear on variety shows or make their presence known on social media, I.N's family has deliberately stayed out of the spotlight. They let their son shine, and they trusted JYP Entertainment to keep him safe. So when rumors started circulating that Stray Kids members were allegedly spotted at a hotel in Gangnam with unidentified individuals, and when those rumors got twisted, exaggerated, and repackaged into a full-blown dating scandal by clickbait outlets, the reaction from I.N's family wasn't just disappointment. According to insiders close to the situation, it was raw, unfiltered anger. Not at Hyunjin. At the system. At the media. At the faceless accounts who weaponized their son's name for engagement and clicks without a single shred of proof. Think about that for a second. You raise a child, you watch him train for years, you sacrifice family time so he can chase a dream that statistically almost never works out, and then one random Tuesday night, your phone starts blowing up because strangers on the internet decided your son is guilty of something he didn't even do. That's not just frustrating. That's devastating. What made I.N's situation particularly painful was the timing. This scandal erupted right in the middle of Stray Kids' world tour preparations, a period where every member was under enormous physical and mental pressure. I.N had been posting comforting messages to Stays on Bubble, sharing late-night voice notes, talking about how much he missed fans, and then suddenly, the comment sections turned hostile. Some fans demanded explanations. Others wrote long threads about feeling betrayed. And a small but loud minority started sending hate directly to I.N's personal tags, accusing him of things that had zero factual basis. The fandom fractured in real time. Loyal Stays tried to trend hashtags defending the group, but the damage was already spreading faster than any counter-narrative could contain. Now here's the part that most international fans completely missed. In Korea, when a scandal like this hits, it doesn't just affect the idol. It affects the family's social standing. I.N's parents live in a community where people know their son is a celebrity. Neighbors talk. Coworkers ask questions. Relatives send concerned messages. The cultural weight of a dating scandal in South Korea isn't the same as in the West, where celebrities dating is practically expected. In Korea, especially for active male idols in their early 20s, even the hint of a romantic relationship can trigger stock price drops for entertainment companies, fan cafe exits numbering in the thousands, and a complete recalibration of an idol's public image. I.N's mother reportedly contacted JYP Entertainment directly, not to ask if the rumors were true, but to demand that the company issue a stronger statement protecting the members. She wasn't interested in vague corporate language about monitoring the situation or taking legal action against malicious posts. She wanted names cleared. She wanted accountability. And according to multiple fan-translated accounts from Korean forums, she wasn't the only parent making that call. The emotional toll on I.N himself was visible to anyone paying close attention. In the weeks following the scandal's peak, his bubble messages became shorter. His usual playful energy on V Lives dimmed noticeably. During a fan signing event, a stay reportedly told him, "We believe you, no matter what," and Hyunjin paused, visibly emotional, before quietly saying, "Thank you, really." That moment was captured and shared thousands of times, becoming a symbol of the unfair pressure idols face when rumors, real or fabricated, take on a life of their own. The truth about I.N's involvement in this scandal is painfully simple. There was none. He was guilty of nothing except being part of a group that became a target. But the scars of public accusation don't disappear just because the accusations were false. His family felt it. He felt it. And stays who watched helplessly as their youngest member weathered a storm he didn't create, they felt it too. If I.N's story was this heavy, and he wasn't even directly connected to the core of the scandal, what happens when we get to a member who actually was named in the original reports? That's exactly where number 7 takes us, and trust me, the family reaction on this one hit completely different. Number 7. Lee No. The cat dad who never explains, but his parents had enough. Lee No, the member who has turned silence into an art form, the idol who would rather let the world guess than ever give them the satisfaction of a straight answer. If you've followed Stray Kids for any length of time, you already know that Lee No is built different. This is a man who was a backup dancer for BTS before he even debuted, who got eliminated from the survival show that formed Stray Kids and then fought his way back in, who carries himself with the kind of quiet intensity that makes you feel like he's always 3 steps ahead of every conversation. He doesn't overshare. He doesn't do emotional monologues on VLive. He pets his cats, Suni, Doonji, and Dory, posts cryptic selfies, drops the most unhinged variety show moments in K-pop history, and then disappears back into his world without a single explanation. That's Lee No. That's always been Lee No. And that's exactly why, when the hotel dating scandal erupted, he handled it the way everyone expected, with absolute, deafening silence. But his parents? His parents did not stay silent. And that's where this story takes a turn nobody in the fandom was prepared for. Lee No grew up in Gimpo, a city just outside Seoul, in a household that fans have pieced together over years of breadcrumbs dropped during variety appearances and fan events. His father has been described by Miho himself in rare personal moments as someone who is hardworking, traditional in values, and deeply proud of what his son has accomplished. His mother, based on stories Lee No has shared over the years, is warm but firm, the kind of Korean mother who shows love through action rather than words, who probably never imagined her quiet, cat-obsessed son would one day be performing in front of 60,000 people in a stadium. They raised him to be independent, and he became exactly that, maybe even more independent than they anticipated. So when the dating scandal hit, and Lee No's name started appearing alongside words like hotel, secret relationship, and late-night meetup across Naver articles and pan threads, the reaction from his family wasn't the dramatic, phone-slamming fury that some other members' parents reportedly displayed. It was something colder, something more controlled, and honestly, something more terrifying. According to accounts that circulated on Korean fan forums, specifically from a user who claimed to have indirect connections to JYP staff, Lee No's father made a single, very pointed inquiry to the company. Not a rant. Not a threat. A question: why is my son's name in articles about something he has nothing to do with, and what is your company doing about it? That one question, delivered with the calm precision of a man who doesn't raise his voice because he doesn't need to, reportedly set off an internal chain reaction at JYP. Because here's what the agency knew that the public didn't. Lee No wasn't just uninvolved in whatever the hotel situation actually was. He wasn't even in the same district that night. Multiple internal schedules, corroborated later by fan-tracked airport and schedule data, placed Miho at a completely different location during the time frame the scandal allegedly took place. He was, by all verifiable accounts, either at the studio or at home with his cats. The idea that he was part of some secret hotel rendezvous wasn't just wrong, it was laughably, provably wrong. But the internet doesn't care about proof when outrage is more entertaining. And that's what made Lee No's family situation uniquely painful. Unlike members whose names were at least tangentially connected to the rumors through vague photo evidence or location proximity, Lee No was dragged in purely because he's part of Stray Kids. His crime was being in the group. That's it. His parents understood this. And their anger wasn't directed at Miho. It was directed squarely at the media ecosystem that allows unverified rumors to be published as quasi-news, shared millions of times, and then quietly forgotten when they turn out to be false, with zero consequences for the outlets that ran them. Lee No's mother, according to the same forum sources, was particularly upset about the international spread of the rumors. She had apparently been made aware, possibly by Miho himself, possibly by the company, that English-language fan accounts and gossip channels had picked up the story and were running with it, adding layers of speculation that didn't exist in the original Korean reports. The idea that her son's reputation was being discussed and dissected by millions of people in languages she couldn't even read, in cultural contexts she couldn't navigate, was a source of genuine distress. There's something deeply human about that image, a mother in Gimpo, sitting in the home where she raised her son, knowing that across oceans and time zones, strangers are debating whether her boy did something wrong, and she can't do a single thing to stop it. Now, Lee No himself? He gave nothing away. In his next public appearance, after the scandal peaked, he walked out with the same half-smirk, the same unbothered energy, the same "I dare you to ask me about it" aura that has become his trademark. During a fan call, when Astae cautiously brought up the topic by saying, "I hope you're doing okay with everything," Miho reportedly responded with a short laugh and said something along the lines of, "My cats don't read the news, so we're fine." Classically no. Deflect with humor. Protect with distance. Never let them see you bleed. But stays who know him, who really know him, not the variety show character, but the real person behind it, could see the cracks. His Instagram activity dropped. His bubble messages, usually a mix of cat photos and savage one-liners, became less frequent. And during one particular concert stage in the weeks following the scandal, fans in the front rows noticed that his eyes were red before the performance even started. He danced flawlessly, of course. He always does. But the energy was different. Heavier. The kind of performance that comes from someone who's channeling something painful into the only outlet they trust, their craft. Lee No's parents ultimately got what they wanted. JYP issued a firmer statement, and legal action was reportedly initiated against several accounts that had specifically named Lee No with fabricated claims. But the damage to the family's sense of security, that invisible thing that lets parents sleep at night knowing their child is okay, that doesn't get restored by a corporate press release. Lee No will probably never publicly address this scandal. That's not who he is. He'll keep dancing, keep loving his cats, keep being the most enigmatic member of the most unpredictable group in K-pop. But somewhere in Gimpo, his parents carry the weight of knowing that their son's world is one anonymous post away from chaos at any given moment. And if you think Lee No's silent storm was intense, wait until you hear what happened with number 6, because this member's parents didn't just call the company. They showed up. Number 6. Bang Chan. The leader who carries everyone, but who carries him when it all falls apart? 12,000 kilometers. That's the distance between Seoul and Sydney, between the JYP Entertainment building where Bang Chan has spent more than half his life, and the home in Australia where his parents, his sister Hannah, and his brother Lucas live their lives away from the chaos of K-pop. 12,000 kilometers of ocean, time zones, and cultural disconnect, and yet, when the hotel dating scandal detonated across every social media platform simultaneously, that distance collapsed to nothing. Because Christopher Bang's phone rang, and on the other end was a family that had sacrificed more than most stays will ever fully comprehend, demanding to know why their eldest son, the boy they sent to Korea at 13 years old with nothing but a dream and a suitcase, was now the face of a scandal he didn't deserve. Let's rewind for a second, because if you're going to understand why Bang Chan's situation hit harder than almost anyone else's in this group, you need to understand the weight this man has been carrying since before Stray Kids even existed. Chan arrived at JYP Entertainment in 2010. He was a kid from the suburbs of Sydney who spoke barely functional Korean, thrown into a trainee system that chews up and spits out hopefuls by the hundreds. He trained for 7 years. 7. Most university degrees take less time than that. During those 7 years, he watched friends debut without him, watched trainees get cut, watched entire groups form and dissolve while he remained in limbo. His parents, back in Australia, supported him through every single one of those years financially, emotionally, spiritually. They didn't just let their son chase a dream. They co-signed it with their own sacrifices. His mother has spoken, in rare moments captured by fans during events, about the heartbreak of sending her child to another country and trusting strangers to raise him. His father, a man who by all accounts is quietly supportive but deeply protective, restructured his family's life around the reality that their firstborn was growing up on the other side of the planet. So when Bang Chan finally debuted in 2018 as the leader of Stray Kids, the member who personally selected the group's lineup, who produces their music, who stays up until 4 in the morning in his studio because he believes every track has to be perfect, his parents didn't just feel pride. They felt vindication. Every missed birthday, every tearful phone call, every moment of doubt, it was all worth it. Their son made it. Now fast forward to the scandal. When the hotel dating rumors first surfaced, Bang Chan was in a uniquely vulnerable position that most fans didn't immediately recognize. As the leader, he wasn't just dealing with his own name being mentioned, he was dealing with the fallout for every single member. That's what leaders do in K-pop. When the group is in crisis, the leader becomes the shield, the spokesperson, the emotional anchor. Chan has done this before. When Stray Kids faced controversies in the past, it was Chan who addressed fans on his late-night V-Live series, Chan's Room, with carefully chosen words that balanced honesty with diplomacy. He's the one who cries on behalf of the group so the others don't have to. He's the one who apologizes even when there's nothing to apologize for, because he understands that in the idol industry, perception is survival. But this time was different. This time, the scandal didn't just threaten the group's image, it threatened the personal trust between Chan and his family. Because here's what international fans often don't grasp about Korean-Australian families in the K-pop ecosystem. Chan's parents aren't just sitting in Sydney casually scrolling past headlines. They're embedded in a Korean-Australian community where K-pop is massive, where everyone knows their son is Bang Chan, and where news travels through group chats and community networks at lightning speed. When the scandal broke, Chan's parents didn't learn about it from a JYP press release. They learned about it from friends, neighbors, and community members who sent screenshots, asked uncomfortable questions, and in some cases, made judgmental comments before any facts were even established. Imagine being Chan's mother, picking up her phone to a flood of messages. Is Chris okay? Did you see what's on the news? Is it true about the hotel? And not having any answers because your son is on the other side of the world, unreachable during schedules, dealing with a firestorm you can't even see. According to fan-sourced accounts from individuals who claim proximity to Chan's extended circle, his parents' reaction was a complicated mix of fury and fear. Fury at the media for running unverified stories. Fury at the fans who turned on the group without evidence. But also fear, the kind of deep, parental fear that never fully goes away, that their son's mental health was being pushed to a breaking point. Because Chan has been open, more open than almost any idol at his level, about the emotional toll of leadership. He's talked on Chan's Room about sleepless nights, about feeling like he's not doing enough, about carrying guilt when things go wrong even if they're not his fault. His parents know this about him. They know their son internalizes everything. And they knew, with absolute certainty, that when this scandal hit, Chan wasn't just worrying about himself. He was worrying about Changbin, about Felix, about I.N, about every single member whose family was also going through hell. He was probably the last person taking care of himself. What reportedly pushed Chan's parents from concerned to genuinely angry was the international media's framing of the scandal. Several English-language outlets that Chan's family in Australia could actually read and understand, unlike the Korean articles, published pieces with sensationalized headlines that implied guilt rather than reporting allegations. One particular article, shared widely on Twitter, used a thumbnail of Bang Chan alongside the word scandal in a way that made it look like he was the primary subject, when the article itself barely mentioned him. Chan's father reportedly contacted JYP's international communications team, not through formal channels, but through a direct line that the families of senior members apparently have access to, and expressed, in no uncertain terms, that the company's failure to protect his son's image in English-language media was unacceptable. He pointed out that Chan had given over a decade of his life to this company, that he had built Stray Kids from the ground up, and that the least JYP could do was ensure that their leader wasn't being used as clickbait for a scandal he had no involvement in. The ripple effects of that conversation were felt almost immediately. Within days, JYP's international PR team issued a rare English-language statement specifically addressing the misleading media coverage surrounding the group, a statement that many stays interpreted as a direct response to pressure from within. Chan himself, in the next Chan's Room broadcast after the worst of the scandal had passed, didn't address the rumors directly. He never does. Instead, he played a playlist of songs he said reminded him of people who stay when things get hard, looked directly into the camera, and said, "I'm not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere." His voice cracked slightly on the word "we." Stays who were watching live flooded the chat with crying emojis, hearts, and the phrase, "We trust you, Chan." It was 3 a.m. in Seoul. He'd probably been in the studio since noon. And somewhere in Sydney, 12,000 kilometers away, his parents were probably still awake too, because when your child is hurting, distance doesn't let you sleep. Bang Chan will keep being the leader. He'll keep producing until dawn, keep smiling on stage, keep telling stays that everything is fine even when it isn't. That's who he is. But every leader has a limit, and this scandal pushed him dangerously close to his. His parents saw it. Stays saw it. And the question nobody wants to ask out loud is, how many more times can he absorb the blow before something gives? If the leader's family was shaken this badly, imagine what happened when the scandal touched a member whose personal life had already been under a microscope for years. Number 5 goes there, and this one? This one gets personal. Number 5. Felix. The Sunshine Boy's darkest week, when even his sisters went to war. There's a reason the internet calls Felix the human embodiment of sunshine. Lee Yong-bak, born in Sydney, raised between two cultures, blessed with a voice so impossibly deep it sounds like it belongs to someone twice his size, has spent his entire career being the warm center of Stray Kids. He's the member who bakes brownies for the staff at 3 a.m. The one who tells every single fan, "I love you," like he genuinely means it every single time, because he does. The one whose freckles became so iconic that an entire generation of K-pop fans started drawing constellations on their own cheeks in tribute. Felix radiates warmth the way the sun radiates light, effortlessly, constantly, without asking for anything in return. And that's exactly why, when the hotel dating scandal wrapped its ugly fingers around his name, the damage felt different. Not sharper, not louder, deeper. Because when you build your entire public identity on being a source of comfort and joy, and then the world suddenly decides you might be something else entirely, the fall isn't just from grace. It's from orbit. Felix's family situation is distinct from Bang Chan's, even though they share the same Australian roots. While Chan was sent to Korea alone as a teenager, Felix's journey was different. He auditioned later, arrived at JYP with less training time, and was famously eliminated from the Stray Kids survival show before being brought back by the group themselves, who refused to move forward without him. That moment, Chan and the members fighting to keep Felix, has become one of the most legendary origin stories in K-pop. But what's less discussed is what was happening back in Sydney during that elimination. Felix's parents watched their son get cut on national television. His two older sisters, Rachel and Olivia, who had been his biggest cheerleader since childhood, watched their little brother's dream get ripped away in real time through a screen. And then they watched it get handed back. That emotional whiplash, the terror of loss followed by the euphoria of restoration, forged something in Felix's family that goes beyond normal parental support. It created a protectiveness that borders on ferocious. His sisters, in particular, have developed a reputation within the Stay fandom as fiercely, unapologetically defensive of their brother. They've been known to subtly address negativity through social media, liking certain supportive posts, following fan accounts that defend Felix, and in at least one documented instance. An account linked to one of his sisters posted a story that fans widely interpreted as a direct response to malicious rumors. So when the hotel dating scandal erupted and Felix's name got dragged into the wreckage, his sisters didn't just sit quietly in Sydney and wait for it to blow over. They went to war. Not publicly, the family is too smart for that. But digitally, in the way that only people who've grown up navigating social media instinctively understand. Within hours of the scandal trending, fan accounts noticed a pattern. Certain toxic posts about Felix were being mass reported with a speed and coordination that didn't match organic fan behavior. Supportive threads about Felix's character were being amplified by accounts that had never previously engaged with K-pop content. Screenshots circulated suggesting that Felix's sisters had activated their personal networks, friends, university connections, community contacts, to form an informal digital defense line around their brother's reputation. It was grassroots reputation management, executed with the precision of people who love someone too much to let strangers destroy him. But the real storm was happening offline, between the family and JYP Entertainment. Felix's parents, according to accounts shared on Korean community boards and later translated by international fan accounts, were not just angry, they were questioning the fundamental arrangement. Their son had moved to a foreign country as a teenager. He'd given up a normal adolescence, missed family milestones, sacrificed the kind of ordinary life that most people take for granted. He'd done everything the company asked, learned Korean until he was fluent, trained until his body broke, promoted until exhaustion became his baseline. And in return, JYP Entertainment was supposed to protect him. That was the unspoken contract. You take our son, you make him a star, but you keep him safe. The hotel scandal shattered that contract in the eyes of Felix's parents. Not because Felix did anything wrong, by all accounts, his connection to the actual hotel rumors was non-existent or, at most, the thinnest possible guilt by proximity. But because the company's initial response was too slow, too vague, and too corporate to provide any real protection. While Felix's name was being torn apart in real time across platforms in multiple languages, JYP's first statement was a boilerplate paragraph about verifying facts and considering legal action. For a family sitting 12,000 kilometers away, watching their son's face get plastered next to scandalous headlines they couldn't control, considering wasn't good enough. They wanted action. Immediate, visible, undeniable action. What made Felix's situation uniquely complicated was his status as a global luxury brand ambassador. By the time the scandal hit, Felix had established himself as one of K-pop's most sought-after fashion figures, with a high-profile relationship with Louis Vuitton that placed him at front rows of fashion weeks, on magazine covers worldwide, and in campaigns worth millions. This wasn't just idol fame, this was crossover, mainstream, global brand-level visibility. And global brands are notoriously allergic to scandal. Felix's parents understood something that many fans didn't immediately consider. If this scandal stuck, if it gained enough traction to become part of Felix's public narrative, the consequences wouldn't just be losing some fans. It could mean losing brand deals, losing magazine features, losing the commercial viability that, in the brutal economics of K-pop, is ultimately what keeps an idol's career alive. A dating scandal for a regular idol is bad. A dating scandal for an idol who is also the face of a luxury empire is potentially career-altering in ways that go far beyond fandom. This economic dimension reportedly drove Felix's father to take a harder line with JYP than he ever had before. Sources suggested that he directly communicated, through whatever channels the families of top-tier idols have access to, that if the company didn't move faster to clear Felix's name, the family would explore independent options for reputation management. Whether that was a genuine threat or strategic pressure is impossible to know from the outside, but the message was clear. This family was done waiting for the corporate machine to catch up to the speed of internet destruction. Felix himself, throughout all of this, did something that broke Stay's hearts in a way that nothing else in this scandal quite matched. He kept posting. He kept sending bubble messages. He kept saying, "I love you." But the tone shifted in ways that only people who'd been following him closely could detect. His messages became shorter. His selfies, usually bright and playful, started appearing with softer lighting, less energy, more of a quietness that didn't suit someone the world calls its sunshine. During one fan video call, a Stay asked Felix how he was really doing. Not the idol answer, the real answer, and Felix paused. He looked down. He smiled, but it was the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes, the kind that's held together by discipline rather than joy. "I'm okay," he said. "I just want to make sure everyone's okay." That's Felix in a sentence. The world could be burning around him, and his first instinct would be to check if you're warm enough. His sisters saw that video. It was shared across private family group chats, across friend networks, across the invisible web of people who love Lee Yo-bok not as Felix the idol, but as Yeonbok the brother, the son, the kid who used to make them laugh at the dinner table in Sydney. And it made them angrier. Not at him. Never at him. At a world that takes someone that pure and makes him apologize for existing in it. The scandal eventually cooled around Felix the way it cooled around most of the members, slowly, unevenly, leaving behind residue that no amount of PR can fully clean. His brand partnerships survived. His career continued upward. But the family dynamic shifted. His parents became more involved in understanding how JYP handles crisis communication. His sisters became even more vigilant online. And Felix himself, the sunshine boy, the human comfort blanket, the member who loves so loudly it sometimes feels like he's trying to fill a silence only he can hear, added one more weight to the collection he carries behind that radiant smile. If Felix's family fought a war of protection from across the ocean, the next member's family didn't have that distance to soften the blow. Number 4 takes us to a parent who was right there in Seoul, close enough to see the damage in person, and what they did next sent shockwaves through the company itself. Number 4. Seungmin. The perfect son's reputation cracked, and his father walked into JYP. In every group, there's one member who never causes trouble. One member whose name has never trended for the wrong reasons, whose reputation is so spotless it almost feels like a cheat code, whose entire existence within the chaotic universe of K-pop seems to operate on a different frequency, calmer, cleaner, more controlled. In Stray Kids, that member is Kim Seungmin, the main vocalist with the pitch-perfect discipline. The baseball fanatic who screams for the Doosan Bears with the same intensity he brings to every high note. The member who other idols describe as the one who actually has it together, who Day6 Young K once called one of the most dedicated juniors he'd ever seen. who has built his entire career on the principle that talent plus consistency plus zero controversy equals longevity. Seungmin doesn't do scandals. Seungmin doesn't do drama. Seungmin studies his craft, supports his members, shows up prepared, and goes home. That's been the formula since trainee days, and it has worked flawlessly, until the night the hotel dating scandal made the formula irrelevant, because when the entire group gets hit, even the cleanest record in the building can't save you from the blast radius. What makes Seungmin's chapter in this scandal fundamentally different from the Australian members or the younger ones is geography. Seungmin is from Seoul. His family isn't watching from 12,000 kilometers away through a phone screen. His parents aren't separated from the crisis by oceans and time zones. They're right there. Same city. Same headlines on the same evening news. Same conversations at the same grocery stores, the same restaurants, the same social circles where everybody knows their son is the kid who sings in that group. What's it called again? Stray Kids, yes, the ones in the scandal. The proximity made everything worse. For families in Australia, the scandal existed primarily in the digital space, alarming, painful, but filtered through screens and distance. For Seungmin's family, it was ambient. It was in the air they breathed. His father, described by those who've encountered him through fan events and family-adjacent interactions as a dignified, composed man with strong traditional Korean values, experienced the scandal not as breaking news, but as a slow contamination of his daily life. Colleagues at work made comments. Extended family members called with questions wrapped in concern that was really curiosity. A neighbor, according to one account shared on a Korean parenting forum that was later flagged by state translators, apparently asked Seungmin's mother directly, in the elevator of their apartment building, whether the hotel thing was true. Picture that moment. You're a mother. You've raised your son to be disciplined, respectful, hardworking. You've watched him train through his teenage years, sacrifice social life, push through vocal lessons until his throat was raw. You've sat in the audience at music shows, heart bursting with pride, watching him perform on stages you couldn't have imagined when he was a child singing into a hairbrush in his bedroom. And now your neighbor is cornering you in an elevator, asking if your son was caught in a hotel scandal, with an expression that's half sympathy and half gossip hunger. Seungmin's mother, from what's been relayed through community accounts, handled that moment with grace. But Seungmin's father handled the larger situation with something else entirely: direct action. Here's where the story escalates beyond anything the fandom expected. Multiple corroborating accounts from Korean fan communities, accounts that gained credibility because they accurately predicted JYP's subsequent public statements before they were released, claim that Seungmin's father didn't just call JYP Entertainment. He physically went to the building. Not to make a scene. Not to shout in a lobby. But to sit across a table from someone in the company's management division and have what was described as a very direct, very uncomfortable conversation about the agency's duty of care. The details of that meeting, if it occurred as described, remain private. But the themes that reportedly emerged tell a story on their own. Seungmin's father allegedly questioned why the company's crisis protocol seemed reactive rather than preventive. Why were there no systems in place to immediately flag and counter false information before it metastasized? Why were the members' personal phone numbers and schedules apparently not secure enough to prevent the kind of leaks that fueled the scandal's spread? And most pointedly, why was his son, a member with zero history of personal controversy, being lumped into a scandal narrative without the company issuing an individualized defense? That last question cuts to the heart of a systemic problem in K-pop crisis management. When a group scandal breaks, agencies almost always respond with a single blanket statement covering all members. It's efficient. It's legally cautious. And it's devastatingly unfair to members who have no individual connection to the controversy. Seungmin's father apparently understood this dynamic better than most non-industry people would, and he challenged it directly. Why should his son, a young man who had done nothing, who had no photos linked to him, no rumors attached to his name specifically, no whisper of personal involvement, bear the same reputational burden as a member who might have actually been present or connected to the events in question? The logic was sound. The emotional weight behind it was heavier. This was a father defending not just his son's career, but his son's character, the character he'd spent over 2 decades building through parenting, through values, through the quiet daily work of raising a good human being. To have that character questioned by strangers who'd never met Seungmin, who knew nothing about the family's sacrifices, who reduced a lifetime of integrity to a trending hashtag, that wasn't just offensive. It was a violation. Seungmin, for his part, processed the scandal in a way that was heartbreakingly characteristic. He didn't withdraw like Lino. He didn't perform pain like some members do on stage. He did what Seungmin always does, he worked harder. In the days following the scandal's peak, he posted vocal covers on the group's social channels. Not sad songs. Not cryptic messages. Just pure, technically brilliant singing, as if to remind the world, and maybe himself, that this is who he is. Not a headline. Not a scandal participant. A singer. A craftsman. Someone whose value isn't determined by what anonymous accounts say about him on the internet. But there was one moment that cracked the armor. During a concert shortly after the scandal period, Seungmin was performing an emotional ballad, a song the group had performed dozens of times before, and his voice wavered. Not a crack from strain. Not a technical failure. A waver that comes from somewhere inside, from a place where the feelings you've been compressing finally find a crack to seep through. He recovered within a beat. The audience might not have even noticed if fan cams hadn't captured it in high definition. But stays noticed. They always notice with Seungmin because he gives them so few moments of vulnerability that when one appears, it carries the weight of everything he's been holding back. Comments flooded social media. Protect Seungmin. He doesn't deserve this. The scandal broke something in him, and for a brief window, the fandom unified around a single, uncomplicated truth. This member did nothing wrong, and he was paying a price anyway. His father's visit to JYP, if the accounts are accurate, reportedly contributed to a shift in how the company handled the remaining weeks of fallout. Subsequent statements became more specific, more pointed, more aggressive in targeting the sources of misinformation rather than issuing vague legal threats into the void. Whether that shift was directly caused by one father sitting across a table and demanding better, or whether it was the cumulative pressure from multiple families reaching a tipping point, is impossible to say definitively. But the timing lined up. And in a story built on circumstantial evidence and unverified claims, sometimes timing is the most honest witness. Seungmin will continue to be the member who never causes trouble. That's not a role he plays, it's who he is. But the scandal taught his family something that no amount of fan love can fully cushion, that in K-pop, innocence isn't a shield. It's just another thing the machine can grind down when the gears start turning. And if the perfect son's family was driven to this level of action, what happens when the scandal reaches a member whose history with controversy is already complicated, whose every move is already scrutinized under a microscope 10 times more powerful than what the others face? Number 3 takes us exactly there, and this one changes the entire temperature of the conversation. Number 3. Han. The boy who battles his own mind, now forced to battle the world too. There is a particular cruelty in watching someone who has already told you they're fragile get thrown into a storm designed to break people who aren't. Han Jae-sung, rapper, vocalist, producer, 1/3 of the creative engine called 3RACHA that powers Stray Kids from the inside out, has never pretended to be invincible. In an industry where idols are manufactured to appear flawless, untouchable, beyond the reach of ordinary human weakness, Han has stood on stages in front of tens of thousands of people and said, with his whole chest, that he struggles with anxiety. Not the casual, socially acceptable kind of anxiety that people mention in interviews to seem relatable. The real kind. The kind that locks your body in place. The kind that steals your breath mid-sentence. The kind that once forced him to step away from Stray Kids activities entirely because his panic disorder had escalated to a point where performing the thing he was born to do, the thing that gives his life meaning, had become a source of terror instead of joy. He came back from that. He always comes back. But every time he does, he carries a little more scar tissue, a little more awareness of how thin the line is between functioning and falling apart. Stays know this about Han. They've watched his journey with a kind of protective tenderness that borders on parental, celebrating his good days, worrying silently during his quiet ones, collectively holding their breath every time he takes a stage because they understand. On a visceral level, that what he does up there costs him more than it costs the others. So when the hotel dating scandal detonated and Han Ji-sung's name entered the blast zone, the fandom didn't just feel outrage. They felt dread. Not dread about what he might have done, dread about what this would do to him. Han's family background adds layers to this story that most casual observers miss entirely. Born in Incheon, raised partly in Malaysia during a formative period of his childhood, Ji-sung grew up navigating cultural displacement in ways that shaped his sensitivity and his songwriting, but also left him with a heightened awareness of not belonging, of being watched, of being judged by standards he didn't fully understand. His parents made the decision to bring him back to Korea and support his pursuit of music, a decision that, in the context of Korean family dynamics, represents an enormous leap of faith. Music isn't the safe path. It's not medicine, it's not law, it's not engineering. It's the path that Korean parents agree to with a knot in their stomach and a prayer that it works out, because if it doesn't, the years lost to training can never be recovered. Han's parents took that gamble. And for years, it paid off spectacularly. Their son became one of the most versatile artists in fourth-generation K-pop, writing lyrics that resonated with millions, rapping with a ferocity that belied his soft features, singing with an emotional depth that producers twice his age couldn't replicate. He was the total package if you could keep him whole. That was always the condition. The talent was limitless, but the vessel carrying it was human, breakable, honest about its cracks in a way that made him both beloved and perpetually at risk. When the scandal broke, Han's parents faced a nightmare scenario that was specifically calibrated to exploit their deepest fear. Their son, their anxious, brilliant, emotionally porous son, was being talked about by millions of strangers in the cruelest possible context. Hotel. Scandal. Dating. Betrayal. The words themselves were weapons, and they were being aimed at a person whose own brain already wages daily warfare against him without any external help. According to accounts that emerged from Korean online communities where parents of trainees and idols sometimes share experiences anonymously, Han's mother's reaction was not the controlled anger of Seungmin's father or the strategic fury of Felix's sisters. It was visceral, immediate, and raw. She reportedly broke down upon learning the full scope of what was being said online, not because she believed any of it, but because she understood, with a mother's intuition that no algorithm can replicate, exactly what this was going to do to her son's mental state. She knew. Before the company called. Before the managers briefed. Before any official assessment of damage was conducted. She knew that Ji-sung was spiraling because she has watched him spiral before, and she recognizes the triggers better than any therapist or corporate handler ever could. Han's father, described in fan-adjacent accounts as a quieter presence than his mother, but no less invested, reportedly took a different approach. Rather than directing his frustration at JYP Entertainment, a battle he perhaps recognized as futile in the short term, he focused on trying to reach Ji-sung directly. This proved more difficult than it should have been. During the peak of the scandal, the members were allegedly advised by management to limit personal phone use to prevent accidental engagement with the online discourse. A well-intentioned policy, perhaps, but one that had the perverse effect of cutting off members from their families at the exact moment they needed them most. Han's father, unable to reach his son through normal channels, reportedly went through the member's manager, a step that in the hierarchical world of K-pop entertainment represents a significant breach of usual protocol. Families contact the company. The company contacts the manager. The manager relays the message. That's the chain. Han's father bypassed it, and the fact that the manager apparently allowed it suggests that even the company's internal gatekeepers understood the severity of what was at stake with this particular member. What Ji-sung's father said to him during that call, if the call happened as described, is unknown. But what happened afterward is documented in the public record. Han, who had been uncharacteristically silent on all platforms during the scandal's initial explosion, posted a single message on Bubble. It wasn't long. It wasn't dramatic. It was something to the effect of, "I talked to my family today. I feel a little more like myself." Stays who read that message understood its weight instantly. For Han to acknowledge that he hadn't been feeling like himself, even indirectly, even wrapped in the cushion of saying he felt a little more like himself, was an admission that the scandal had gotten inside. It had breached the walls he'd spent years building between his public resilience and his private vulnerability. The message was liked, screenshotted, shared, and cried over by hundreds of thousands of fans within hours. It became, for many Stays, the single most painful artifact of the entire scandal, not because it was dramatic, but because it was small and quiet and honest in the way that only someone who's too tired to perform okayness can be. The mental health dimension of Han's experience during the scandal opened a broader conversation within the fandom that had been simmering for years, but never fully surfaced. Stays began openly discussing the ethics of fandom itself, the way idol culture creates parasocial bonds that can become possessive, the way fans sometimes feel entitled to emotional access that no human should be obligated to provide, the way the very love that sustains an idol's career can curdle into something toxic when that idol is perceived to have betrayed the relationship by doing something as fundamentally human as being romantically interested in someone. Han's anxiety became a mirror that the fandom was forced to look into, and what they saw wasn't always flattering. Some Stays admitted, in long thread posts and tearful video responses, that their initial reaction to the scandal had been selfish, that they'd been so focused on their own feelings of disappointment that they hadn't considered what the members, especially members like Han, were going through. Others pushed back, arguing that fans have a right to their emotions and that holding idols accountable isn't the same as harming them. The debate was messy, unresolved, and important, the kind of reckoning that fandoms rarely have but always need. Han's parents, through whatever channels they maintained with the company, reportedly advocated for one specific outcome above all others, that JYP provide Jisung with access to professional mental health support during and after the scandal, not as an optional benefit, but as a mandatory part of the crisis response. Number 2. Hyunjin, scars that never fully closed, a family that refused to bleed twice. Some wounds heal. Others just learn to hide. And if there is one member of Stray Kids who understands the difference between those two things with a clarity that no one his age should possess, it's Hwang Hyunjin, the main dancer, the visual center, the artist whose face has graced Versace campaigns and whose brushstrokes on canvas reveal a soul far more complex than any stage persona could contain. Hyunjin is, by almost every measurable standard, one of the most striking human beings in the Korean entertainment industry. His features have been analyzed in viral threads, painted by fan artists in every medium imaginable, and compared to classical sculptures by people who don't usually care about K-pop, but couldn't scroll past his face without stopping. He moves like liquid on stage, dances with a controlled violence that makes choreographers weep, and paints in his private hours with the kind of quiet intensity that suggests the art isn't a hobby, it's therapy. Because Hyunjin has needed therapy. He's needed healing. He's needed time, space, and grace in quantities that the K-pop industry is structurally incapable of providing. And the reason for that need is a chapter in his career that every Stay knows by heart, but still struggles to talk about without their voice tightening: the 2021 bullying controversy that nearly ended everything. In early 2021, allegations surfaced from a former classmate accusing Hyunjin of bullying behavior during his school years. The accusations spread with the speed and mercilessness that only Korean internet culture can produce. Within days, Hyunjin's name was synonymous with cruelty in the public discourse. He wrote a handwritten apology. He met with the accuser. He stepped away from Stray Kids activities entirely, disappearing from the group for months in a hiatus that Stays experienced as a prolonged grief, not knowing if he'd come back, not knowing if the group would be whole again. Not knowing if the boy they loved had done things that made that love complicated. He came back. Eventually, carefully, with a quietness that replaced his former exuberance. The Hyunjin who returned was different, more measured, more careful with his words, more aware that the ground beneath his feet could open up at any moment and swallow him again. Stays welcomed him with an intensity that bordered on religious fervor, as if the volume of their love could retroactively erase the months of pain. But the scars remained. They always remain. And his family, his parents, who had lived through every excruciating day of that hiatus, who had watched their son's name get destroyed on national television and international social media, who had fielded calls from relatives and endured whispers from acquaintances and sat across dinner tables from a boy who looked like he'd forgotten how to believe in himself. Those parents carried scars of their own. The 2021 controversy didn't just wound Hyunjin. It traumatized his entire family unit. His mother, according to fragments shared across fan communities over the years, went through a period of genuine emotional crisis during his hiatus. The guilt of wondering whether she'd missed something in her son's upbringing, the anger at the public for reducing her child to a single accusation, the helplessness of watching a situation unfold that no amount of parental love could fix. These aren't things that disappear when the idol returns to the stage. They settle into the body. They change the way you sleep. They make you flinch every time your phone buzzes with a notification because your nervous system has been rewired to associate unexpected information with catastrophe. So when the hotel dating scandal erupted in 2025, years after the bullying controversy, years after Hyunjin had painstakingly rebuilt his reputation through flawless performances, stunning artistic output, and a public demeanor so carefully calibrated that it left zero room for criticism, and his name appeared once again in scandalous headlines, the reaction from his family wasn't anger. It was something beyond anger. It was the sound of a wound ripping open that they'd spent years stitching closed, a sound that's silent to everyone except the people who feel it. Hyunjin's parents had done the impossible once. They'd stood by their son through a controversy that, statistically, ends most idol careers. They'd weathered the social fallout in their personal lives, the changed dynamics with friends who quietly distanced themselves, the awkward pauses in conversations when stray kids came up, the unspoken judgment that hangs in the air when your child has been publicly accused of something, regardless of whether it was proven or resolved. They'd rebuilt their own sense of normalcy alongside their son's career. And now, just when the foundation felt solid again, the ground was shaking. The specific cruelty of Hyunjin's position in the hotel scandal was that he didn't need to be directly involved for the damage to be maximal. His history made him a magnet for amplified scrutiny. While other members' names appeared in scandal discussions as part of a group narrative, Hyunjin's name appeared with an asterisk, and remember, this isn't even his first controversy. Comment sections dragged up the 2021 situation as if it were evidence of a pattern, as if one allegation from years ago combined with one unverified hotel rumor somehow equaled a character verdict. The logical fallacy was obvious to anyone thinking clearly, but clarity is the first casualty of internet outrage. Hyunjin's mother reportedly reacted to this secondary weaponization of her son's past with a ferocity that sources described as unlike anything they'd seen from her before. During the 2021 crisis, she had been devastated but largely passive, trusting the company and the process to resolve things. This time, she was not passive. This time, she had the experience of having trusted the system once and watching it nearly consume her son. She reportedly communicated to JYP Entertainment, through direct and unambiguous channels, that the company's response to the hotel scandal needed to specifically address the recycling of past controversies as a tool of harassment. She didn't just want Hyunjin's name cleared in relation to the current scandal. She wanted a statement, or at minimum, a legal mechanism, that targeted accounts and outlets using the 2021 situation as ammunition in a completely unrelated context. This was a sophisticated demand, one that reflected a mother who had spent years learning how the industry's crisis machinery works, where its weaknesses are, and how to push levers that actually produce results. Hyunjin's father, less vocal in fan-sourced accounts, but consistently described as a stabilizing presence, reportedly focused his energy on Hyunjin himself rather than the company. During the worst days of the scandal's circulation, when anti-fan threads were gaining traction, and even some disillusioned stays were questioning whether the group's repeated proximity to controversy was a sign of something deeper, Hyunjin's father allegedly made a point of visiting his son in person, not at the company building, not through official channels, but at Hyunjin's personal residence. The image of that, a father showing up at his adult son's apartment, not because he was summoned, but because he understood that his son wouldn't ask for help even when drowning, carries an emotional weight that transcends the specifics of any scandal. Hyunjin, like many people who've been publicly shamed before, has developed an almost pathological self-reliance. He processes pain through art, through dance, through the controlled expenditure of emotion on stage where it can be disguised as performance. He doesn't reach out. He reaches inward. And his father knew that the only way to break through that self-imposed isolation was to physically be there, standing in the doorway, saying with his presence what words couldn't adequately convey, "You are not alone," even when you've convinced yourself that alone is safer. The artistic output Hyunjin produced during the scandal period tells its own story for anyone willing to read it. He posted paintings on social media, dark, abstract pieces that deviated sharply from the softer, more colorful work he'd been sharing in previous months. One piece in particular, shared without caption or context, featured what fans interpreted as a figure standing in rain, face obscured, colors bleeding into each other as if the subject was dissolving. Art critics probably wouldn't read anything into it. Stays read everything into it because they've learned to decode Hyunjin's emotional state through his creative output the way meteorologists read weather patterns, not by what he says, but by what he makes. His family saw those paintings too. And they understood, perhaps better than any fan could, that their son was processing something he couldn't verbalize. The hotel scandal, for Hyunjin, was never really about a hotel. It was about the resurrection of a feeling he'd spent years trying to bury, the feeling of being perceived as guilty by default, of living in a world where your worst moment follows you like a shadow that grows longer every time new light hits it. His parents' fury wasn't just about this scandal. Number 1. Changbin, the name at the center of the fire, the family that declared war on an industry. Every scandal has an epicenter. Every storm has an eye. And in the hotel dating scandal that consumed Stray Kids, that shattered fandom trust, that sent shockwaves through families from Seoul to Sydney, the epicenter, the eye, the name that appeared first, loudest, and most frequently in every headline, every forum thread, every whispered conversation in the hallways of JYP Entertainment was Seo Changbin, the main rapper, the dark horse producer. The compact powerhouse who spits bars with the force of a freight train and then, 5 minutes later, turns into the softest, most doe-eyed version of himself that fans have nicknamed Binny. Because the duality is so extreme it feels like two different humans sharing one body. Changbin, the member who trained alongside Bang Chan in the earliest days of 3 Racha, who has writing credits on more Stray Kids tracks than most fans realize, who pours his insecurities about his appearance, his height, his place in an industry obsessed with conventional beauty into lyrics so raw they read like entries torn from a private journal. This is the member the scandal chose. Or, more accurately, this is the member the scandal was built around, because when the original rumors first surfaced on a late-night pan post that would go on to be viewed millions of times before it was eventually taken down, the details, however vague and unverified, pointed in one direction. A male idol from a top JYP group, spotted in the lobby of a Gangnam hotel, allegedly accompanied by an individual whose identity was obscured in blurry, timestamp questionable photos. Physical description clues in the original post, build, height, specific clothing style, were cross-referenced by internet detectives within hours, and the consensus, right or wrong, landed on Changbin. The machinery of accusation assembled itself with terrifying efficiency. Within a single news cycle, Changbin went from being one of the most respected underground to mainstream rappers in K-pop to being the face of a scandal he hadn't been given even a moment to respond to. Fan-compiled evidence threads appeared, stitching together unrelated photos, schedule gaps, and circumstantial observations into a narrative that felt convincing only because people wanted it to be convincing. Confirmation bias did what it always does. It turned fragments into a story, and that story spread faster than any correction ever could. Now here's where you need to understand Changbin's family to understand why number 1 on this list isn't just another entry. It's the entry that changed the rules. Changbin grew up in Yongin, Gyeonggi Province, in a family that fans have come to know through years of small revelations. His older sister has been a quiet but consistent presence in his public life, occasionally referenced in behind-the-scenes content, known within fan circles for being supportive in a way that's deeply personal rather than performative. His parents, his mother especially, have been described through fan-sourced accounts as the kind of Korean family that takes immense pride in their son's accomplishments, but maintains a strict boundary between his public life and their private world. They don't seek attention. They don't show up on broadcasts. They exist in the background, a foundation so solid that Changbin has been able to build his career on top of it without ever worrying about whether the ground would hold. When the scandal erupted and Changbin's name was identified as the primary target, that foundation didn't just hold. It activated. Changbin's mother's reaction, according to multiple overlapping accounts from Korean community forums that gained significant credibility during the scandal period, was immediate, unequivocal, and unlike anything the other members' families had reportedly displayed. She didn't call JYP and express concern. She didn't send a message through proper channels. She didn't wait for the company's crisis protocol to kick in. She called Changbin first. And according to what was later relayed through second-hand accounts that Changbin himself may have indirectly confirmed through a cryptic bubble message referencing, "The people who know me don't need to ask if it's true," the conversation was not gentle. It was a mother cutting through the noise with a single demand: tell me exactly what happened, tell me right now, and do not protect anyone's feelings, including mine. What Changbin told her the truth, as he experienced it, reportedly gave his mother everything she needed. Not reassurance. Ammunition. Because the truth, according to everything that has emerged in the aftermath, was far more mundane and far less scandalous than the internet's fever dream. Changbin, by accounts pieced together from scheduled data, member location tracking, and company-adjacent sources, was at or near the hotel in question, but not for any romantic rendezvous. The location in Gangnam where the hotel was situated is also home to multiple recording studios, restaurants frequented by industry professionals, and entertainment company satellite offices. Being near a hotel in Gangnam as a working K-pop idol is about as remarkable as a Wall Street banker being spotted near a coffee shop in the financial district. The original post had taken a mundane reality, an idol existing in a neighborhood where idols routinely work, and alchemized it into something sinister through the deliberate omission of context and the strategic deployment of blurry photos that could have been anyone, anywhere. Changbin's mother, armed with her son's account and, reportedly, with corroborating information she demanded and received from JYP's management team, did something that no other parent in this scandal is reported to have done. She retained independent legal counsel. Not JYP's lawyers. Not the company's legal team, which she apparently viewed as more interested in protecting the brand than protecting her son. Her own lawyer. Separately engaged. Independently funded. Answerable to no one except the CEO family. So here we are. 8 members. 8 families. 8 different versions of the same agony. Watching someone you raised, someone you sacrificed for, someone whose first steps you remember and whose dreams you co-signed with your own future, get dragged through a machine that chews up reputations for content and spits out the remains without a second thought. From I.N's mother demanding stronger company statements, to Lino's father delivering a single devastating question that triggered internal reviews, to Bang Chan's family battling misleading English language media from across an ocean, to Felix's sisters waging a digital guerrilla war in defense of their brother's brand and soul, to Seungmin's father walking into JYP's building and sitting across from executives who had no choice but to listen, to Han's parents fighting to reach there. Anxious Sun through layers of corporate protocol designed to keep families at arm's length, to Hyunjin's mother refusing to let old wounds be weaponized in a new war, to Changbin's family hiring independent lawyers and dismantling the scandal's architecture piece by piece. This story was never really about a hotel. It was never really about dating. And it was never really about whether stays were heartbroken, although many of them were, deeply and genuinely. This story was about the invisible people behind the idols. The parents who don't appear on variety shows. The sisters who monitor social media with the vigilance of intelligence analysts. The fathers who show up at apartments unannounced because they know their sons won't ask for help. The mothers who cry alone in kitchens in Gimpo, in Yongin, in Sydney, in Seoul, because the world decided their child was guilty before breakfast and moved on to the next scandal by dinner. K-pop sells perfection. It packages human beings into products and markets them as flawless, ageless, relationship-free entities designed for consumption. But behind every idol is a family that didn't sign up for any of this, a family that wanted their child to succeed, not to become public property. The hotel dating scandal tested those families in ways that no trainee contract, no debut showcase, no sold-out stadium could have prepared them for. And what it revealed, ultimately, is something the industry has known but refused to acknowledge for decades, that the system is not designed to protect the people it profits from, and when the system fails, families are the last line of defense. Every parent in this story fought. Not all of them fought the same way, not all of them had the same resources or the same temperament, but every single one of them chose their child over the industry's convenience. And that, in a world that treats idols as disposable commodities, is the most radical act of all. So the next time a scandal breaks, and it will, because this industry runs on cycles of creation and destruction, remember that behind the trending hashtags and the outrage threads and the carefully worded company statements, there are parents. Real parents. Losing sleep, making calls, hiring lawyers, holding their children, and asking the same question that parents have asked since the beginning of time. Why is the world so determined to hurt someone I love? Stays, protect your artists. But never forget, someone was protecting them long before you knew their names. And someone will keep protecting them long after the last headline fades.